Well, it was my life. I mean, if you take away SMS, there's nothing left.
I first met Len at SMS in the fall of 1974. He was the hugely capable math and science teacher covering all the disciplines well. At one point, he mentioned that he'd been working towards a PhD in engineering. Perhaps it was physics, while also working on naval weapon systems for General Electric in Pittsfield. And then, just like that, he quit both to head for the North Woods. He explained, "I would like to tell you that I had a crisis of conscience. I didn't. I just didn't want to be a company man anymore. I have thought of that declaration of personal sovereignty many times in the intervening years. More than anyone else I can think of, Len was the author of his own life. He wrote his own book. And this was not an uncomplicated spirit. There were iterations of Len with which to engage. If he once launched into an explanation of deep inelastic neutrinos, or a complex MIT lab challenge requiring stratospheric math and engineering skills, you suddenly understood that, just now, for you, English was a second language. Because of Len, I believe we were the first school in Vermont to have desktop computers, the magnificent Commodore 64, with a cassette tape for operating software. At about that time, the issue of artificial intelligence arose, and I asked Len, "When will we know we are facing AI?" And he said, "When you ask the computer a question, it answers it properly, but then goes on to frame the next logical question on its own." And now here we are, wondering if AI will dump us into or out of the matrix. Students responded to Len's essential kindness and good humor. However, he also had boundaries one did not trifle with. He and I were true vagabonds one spring break in the middle 1980s. We had borrowed Bob Rivard's boat and were cruising the British Virgin Islands. The boat was a lovely 30-footer, but the refrigeration was down. It turns out that you can take just so many nights of warm rum, plain bread, cheese product, and Pringles. This was clearly triumph of the swill. So finally, one night we decided to go ashore to a fancy French bistro. However, in order to impress us with the wisdom of our fine dining choice, its pretentiousness tried to justify its monstrous wait times. After a very long wait, both Len and I had enough and stood up to leave. The waiter descended upon us like a harpy, which was a nearly fatal mistake. That night Len was quicker on the draw than I was, and justice was on his side. The good Mr. Bugel commenced to fillet the gentleman by listing his malfeasances, shabby attitude, and general crimes against humanity. It was quite impressive, all the more so for the lack of profanity or blasphemy. It was about then I realized you could channel H2SO4. I would like to believe Len occupied a sparsely populated province where Buddhism meets subatomic physics. All real numbers were the tools of his trade, but he could countenance, for example, the fact that in mathematics there are layers of infinity, which is, I should think, the neighborhood of the Buddha. Len would love that notion and would toss it around even as he was deconstructing deep inelastic neutrinos. So to you, Len, Commodore of the Fleet, Buddha of the Long Trail, vaya con Dios, my friend, vaya con Dios.
Stratton Mountain School at that point was brand new. This was the first year that it was going to be a full-time school. I said, yeah, that's the one I want to do. It was for less money than the other one that I was offered, but I said, no, I really want to do this. And I thought I would do it for a couple of years and then go back to engineering. 35 years later, I retired from Stratton Mountain School.
Oh, Leonard, oh my goodness, if I could tell you the stories. One moment that I remember the most was when we were in the basement of the Tyrol. We had all the test tubes lined up on the bar because our science lab was actually an old bar. So was our library, for that matter.
The first year that we were a full-time school, we were in the Hotel Tyrol, but it was still operating as a hotel. What we called our library, it was a big open, it had been a bar. In fact, my physics classes were always at the bar downstairs.
Stratton Mountain School wouldn't have been the same without you.
I first met Len as a junior here at SMS, and from what I remember about him, he brought such a level of dedication and enthusiasm toward his students. Now that I'm back here teaching in SMS, I look at him as a role model and try to do the same thing he did. I want to thank Len for not only his contributions to SMS, but also being a role model for me.
I just wanted to add my thanks to Len Bugel for all that he has done for me in my life and also for the Stratton Mountain School. One time when he wanted to award me for something I had done in his science class, he thought he would make the trophy himself, and he went out and he found a squashed frog on the road that was all kind of thin and petrified, and he took a big nail and nailed it to a wooden base at a ceremony and gave me this great award, which I kept for a long time until it finally got too smelly and I had to throw it out. I want to thank Len again for all he's done for the school, and I know we'll all miss him a lot.
I have some great memories of working with Len. I arrived as a young teacher. He was just amazing from the get-go, very welcoming. He loved to teach, he loved working with kids. Len really told it as it is. You know, he would let kids hear what he thought of their efforts, and I think they really responded positively to the honesty because they knew how much he cared. He had a vision of what needed to be done to make the place work, and he would pursue it whether the leadership wanted it that way or not. Len had been around long enough, he'd do it his way. So he was a blast to work with, and we miss him.
Len Bugel is one of the most important people in my life. I was lucky enough to have Len as my tutor in 11th grade physics class, and he was an inspirational teacher and opened my eyes to all the things that we can do in physics. And because of that experience with Len, I ended up majoring in physics in college and then going on to have a career teaching and doing research.
The first really standout student that I had was probably Frances Hellman, Warren Hellman's oldest daughter. She, in fact, went on to become a PhD physicist. Last I heard, at least, she was the head of the physics department at UC Berkeley.
I owe so much gratitude to Len. I only wish I had spent more time telling him that while he was alive.
Len and we taught a class together in freshman year, conceptual physics, for 1 year, during which I learned a tremendous amount of Len. Len is a super enthusiastic teacher. He's very good at getting all the students engaged. What I remember is Len's passion for anything physics, and so he continued his research in the summers. And when he came back, he liked to integrate that into the classroom lessons. One of the memories I have is that he would pull out a Doppler counter or Geiger counter, put it on his desk, fascinating the kids, and this was, of course, for him the entry point to talk deep physics with everyone. And I'm really, really appreciative that I got to spend the time with him in the classroom, also outside of the classroom.
Hey everybody, it's Margaret Schlachter, class of '01, and I'm actually standing right outside of Len's classroom, and this lives on in Len's classroom. I'm not sure how many other alums remember this, but it's still here. It's got to be like 40 years old or more. I don't know, maybe it's as old as the school, but just definitely remember Len using something like this or having this around. Len's really the reason I feel like one of the big reasons I got into education was he completely kind of shaped differently, like the idea of what you could do as a teacher and what education could be. And Len was the one who left his door open so we could fill the hallway with Dixie cups full of water before we went on our senior trip. So thanks, Len, for helping us delay school for everyone else back in 2001.
I've been asked to offer a few memories concerning Len, and I'm most happy to do so. Len preempted me in his initial arrival at SMS. So let's just begin to describe him as a man versus scientist. Throughout my 35 years of service, I saw Len as a most congenial person, always cordial, always cheerful. He possessed a magnificent belly laugh. He could be spotted in a crowd by his signature uniform, a plaid shirt with a pen in his chest pocket. Let's continue with Len the scientist. He was not only interesting, but interested in his surroundings, whether in the classroom, or on a camping trip, or just simply outside. He was both caring as well as curious, whether it concerned a flummoxed student or his atoms, protons, neutrons, and neutrinos. I suspect that his focus inspired all of his students. Also, he was most patient with us as colleagues when trying to explain his theories, especially to me, since during my high school education I was physics in absentia mentally. He was a teacher caught up in his research and admired for it. It is said that qualities make the man. That is so true about Len. All in all, Len was and still remains in our collective memories as a hail fellow well met.
I was saddened to hear about the passing of Len Bugel, but very fortunate that I was able to have him as a teacher for many years at Stratton. So I have quite a few Len stories, but the two that are my favorites are when we learned about moles in class, which is some kind of mathematical equation I still don't understand to this day. But we used to make him do moles of donuts, moles of cars, all these things, and how many it would take to get to the moon. Just to watch him do the math in his head, he would act like he was explaining it on the chalkboard, but realistically he just did it in his head, and I still can't even figure it out, even if I had a whole sheet of paper to write it down on. The other one would be when you're giving him an excuse, he would say, "You're so full of shit, your eyes are turning brown." I'm gonna miss Len. I loved him. He was a great teacher, a great man.
I have many fond memories of Len, including that he was always a champion of the individual. And he also laid the foundation for the school's ongoing commitment to STEM curricula. I think Len represented the best of SMS and upheld the highest standards on the academic side of the house. I feel doubly fortunate to have been in his orbit as he went on to also teach our son, Court, class of '08. R.I.P. to a true legend. You are missed, Len.
Len was so much more than a teacher to me. He was so impactful in my life. I did spend the summer before my senior year living on campus with him in Chicago at the Fermi National Accelerator Laboratory, which at the time I don't think I had any clue just, what an experience that would be. Basically living with a 60-some-odd-year-old on a campus with 50 other scientists from around the world. He also taught me how to drive stick shift that summer. So he was already well-grade, but I think I gave him a few more wrinkles during that. After college, I had a little bit of cold feet and was thinking about going to medical school, but wanted to get some real-world experience. And Len said, "Hey, I'm about to retire. Why don't you come back to SMS and I'll help you get started. You can take over my physics classes," and that's what I ended up doing. And for 2 years, I had to fill Len's shoes, which was, an honor, but also a huge challenge. But Len was there every step of the way, and everything that Len shared with me and opened my eyes to really just changed my life and brought me to where I am today. And so I credit him. He was a great teacher, a great friend. He will be missed.
One of the best teachers we had was Leonard. The winters were long, so I would go up in the morning and have breakfast at the school with Leonard. Leonard would be there every morning at 7 for breakfast. He would be in his lab at 7:15, and any kid who wanted to come in to see him before training and just to get some extra help, Leonard was there. Every day he was available to the kids, and I'd see them kids marching by my history room because history was a lot easier than what Leonard was teaching.
I'm Mick Hellman. I was a student at Stratton Mountain School from the mid to late 1970s. So I had Len as a teacher, but I also got to know Len as a family friend because Len often accompanied our family on our various hikes, including the notorious 180-mile-long journey on the Tahoe Yosemite Trail in approximately 1975 or 1976. I always loved having Len on those journeys. Partly he would explain things along the way, like I remember there were these odd-shaped clouds that he told us were lenticular, and we didn't believe him because we thought maybe that he had named them after himself, but he was in fact correct. That's what they were called. And then also he was just incredibly funny and kind, and he was a sweet man. and we loved him very much.
You know, I think I said this already. When I first came here, I thought I would be here for a couple of years, and I just couldn't leave. The place was such a great place to teach, and such a great, surroundings. Living in southern Vermont was wonderful. It was really a touch and go thing for the first couple of years, but then it started to grow pretty quickly because we got to be known as somebody who could not only train ski racers, but also give them a decent education. So yeah, I would say SMS saved my life, gave me a life,